So, picture this for a second. It is 2006.
Okay, 2006, setting the scene.
Right. And you are watching The Devil Wears Prada. The elevator doors open, and the formidable, literally terrifying fashion editor, Miranda Priestly, steps out.
Oh, man. That scene.
It's iconic, right? And instantly, the atmosphere in the entire office just completely shifts. Like, the sea of employees literally parts for her.
They're practically diving under their desks in sheer terror. I mean, people are frantically changing their shoes, they're clearing the hallways, literally holding their breath.
Yes, exactly. The panic is so visceral. She walks right up to her assistant's desk, and without breaking stride, without making eye contact,
Not even a glance.
right, without even a fraction of a second to acknowledge this assistant's humanity, she carelessly flings her heavy, incredibly expensive designer coat and bag right onto the desk.
It is such an unforgettable image. I mean, that single visual tells you absolutely everything you need to know about the power hierarchy in that room. And honestly, it tells you about the power hierarchy of that entire era of corporate culture.
It really does. But here is the really fascinating update that we are exploring today on the deep dive.
Yeah, this is the good part.
In the modern evolution of this character, in the contemporary update of this exact workplace dynamic, Miranda has to hang that coat herself.
Which is wild to think about.
It is. And that tiny shift, that is basically the sound of the brilliant jerk archetype dying in real time.
Completely dying.
Yeah. The era of tolerating toxic high performers is just, well, it's over. So we really want to look at exactly why those power dynamics shifted.
Right, because it didn't just happen out of nowhere.
Exactly. So today, we're diving deep into the democratization of the modern workplace, the honestly terrifying math of how toxic leaders actively destroy team morale, and most importantly, how a leader can maintain razor-sharp standards without destroying the people around them.
Because it's a massive structural shift. I mean, we are moving away from an era where a leader's brilliance was basically a shield.
A shield that just let them get away with anything.
Exactly. It completely immunized them against basic standards of human decency. So we're going to unpack the psychological mechanisms behind this change today.
Because the financial and cultural impact on organizations is just staggering.
It really is.
So think about your own career for a second.
Yeah.
Have you ever worked for a, quote-unquote, genius boss?
Oh, I think most people have at least one in their work history.
Right. Someone whose absolute brilliance or their sales numbers were just undeniable, but their terrible toxic behaviors was constantly excused by upper management because of those results.
Yeah. Oh, that's just how they are.
Exactly. We have all seen it. And today, we are dissecting exactly why that excuse is finally falling apart.
To really understand where we are now, though, we have to deeply anchor ourselves in that 2006 baseline.
The Dark Ages.
The Dark Ages, yeah. The original Miranda Priestly character and the real-world executives that she represented, they embodied the ultimate, highly competent, formidable leader. But the key factor there was that this leadership style was visibly, unapologetically toxic. And the system completely rewarded it.
Highly toxic. I mean, the analysis we are looking at highlights some very specific behaviors that were literally just accepted as the cost of doing business back then.
Oh, absolutely.
Like publicly berating staff in front of their peers, just to set an example.
Which is horrifying.
It's awful. Or using raw asymmetrical power to constantly pressure a team right to the breaking point. And of course, tossing a coat onto a desk as if the subordinates were literal pieces of furniture.
Completely devoid of agency.
Yeah.
And what's crucial to understand is the cultural justification of that time.
Yeah.
Because people didn't just accept it for no reason.
Right. There was a rationale.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The collective mindset was essentially built on two pillars. So first, there was this unquestioned reverence for hierarchy.
The idea of she is the boss, so you submit.
Precisely. The organizational chart was absolute law. And then the second pillar was the myth of the untouchable genius.
Oh, right.
The whole, she's an industry icon, therefore her brilliance makes her untouchable kind of thing.
It's the rock star surgeon analogy. We see this trope all the time in media. And let's be real, it was a literal reality in hospitals for decades.
Oh, 100%.
You have this brilliant cardiothoracic surgeon who walks into the operating room, throws a scalpel at a scrub nurse, screams at the anesthesiologist, acts like an absolute tyrant.
Just a complete nightmare to work with.
Right. But the hospital administration just looks the other way. And why? Because everyone says, well, they're the only one in the tri-state area who can do this incredibly complex heart valve repair. So we just have to deal with the collateral damage.
Yeah, that was the logic.
It was this dark, unspoken pact.
Yeah.
You essentially trade your dignity for proximity to greatness.
That is the perfect way to frame it. The bad behavior was literally viewed as the toll you had to pay on the road to success.
Wow.
It wasn't seen as a bug in the corporate system. It was seen as a feature.
A feature.
Yeah.
That's so messed up.
It is. But the prevailing theory of management in these high-stakes environments was that intense friction was basically required to generate heat and light.
So if there's no yelling, no crying, no extreme stress, then the work must just not be important enough.
Exactly. That was the literal metric for importance.
Which, I mean, that really messes with the psychology of the
It
workplace.
completely distorts it.
I remember entering the workforce and honestly feeling that if I wasn't suffering, if my stomach wasn't just in absolute knots on Sunday night,
The Sunday scaries?
the worst Sunday scaries, if I didn't have those, I felt like I probably wasn't doing important career accelerating work.
And that right there is a psychological distortion at play. We actively conflated toxic traits with positive professional traits.
But we didn't know any better.
We didn't. We lacked the vocabulary to separate them. So we believed that a strict, unyielding boss automatically meant a serious boss. We thought that a manager who constantly pressured you to the point of burnout, the one texting you at 2 a.m. on a Saturday, was simply a highly professional boss.
Which is just wild in hindsight.
It is, and honestly, most insidiously, we believed that an angry, explosive boss was just a brilliant mind, burdened by the sheer weight of their own high expectations.
Okay, wait. Burdened by the sheer weight of their own high expectations. That is such a convenient, romanticized excuse for just being a massive jerk.
It really is, isn't it?
It completely frames the abuser as the actual victim of their own genius.
Exactly. It paints their lack of emotional regulation as just a symptom of their deep passion.
Wow.
But think about what this did to an entire generation of young workers. People were trained with this crucible mindset.
The whole trial by fire thing.
Right. The philosophy was essentially, endure it now, absorb the abuse, and you'll become great later.
Suffering was falsely equated with professional development.
Yes. You were quite literally expected to earn your stripes by surviving the trauma of a toxic leader.
It's completely twisted when you say it out loud. We basically treated corporate trauma as a legitimate form of mentorship.
We did.
Like, if you made it through a couple of years under a monster, you got a badge of honor. You were battle-tested.
And for decades, that was just the water everyone swam in. It was reinforced by the media, it was reinforced by corporate reward structures, and honestly, by the simple lack of alternatives.
Because what else were you going to do?
Right. But that model relied on a very specific balance of power, a balance that fundamentally relied on information asymmetry and the isolation of the everyday employee.
Which brings us to the breaking point. Because, the narrative you hear a lot from older executives is that a new, younger generation entered the workforce and they were just, quote unquote, too soft to handle the pressure.
Ah, yes, the famous participation trophy argument.
Exactly. But looking at the sources we have, looking at the data, that is a completely lazy, inaccurate narrative.
It's a huge oversimplification.
Because the actual shift isn't about being soft.
Yeah.
It's structural. It is all about the democratization of workplace power.
This is a profound shift. The workplace didn't change because human psychology suddenly altered overnight. Yeah. Society changed because organizational power can now be questioned in real time. The absolute monarchy of the boss has essentially been dismantled by transparency.
Let's really look at the contrast between the past and the present here, because it's fascinating. Previously, like in that 2006 era, a subordinate had absolutely zero right to say, hey, the way you spoke to me in that meeting is unacceptable.
You would never even dream of saying that.
Never. Because the boss held unmitigated power over your evaluations, your promotions, your bonuses, your reference.
Everything, your whole livelihood.
Exactly. The employee existed in a total silo. You speak up, you get crushed, and literally no one outside that room ever knows what happened.
Because there's no trail, no proof.
But today, an inappropriate remark in a Zoom meeting isn't just swallowed. It can be recorded.
Yep.
A toxic email can be screenshotted and shared on a Slack channel in 2 seconds. The internal culture of a company can be instantly broadcast to the entire world on Glassdoor.
It's a totally different landscape.
And there are anonymous HR reporting portals that route directly to external compliance officers. The boss can't just hide anymore.
Exactly. The technological and cultural infrastructure around the employee has completely evolved. It provides avenues of recourse and, more importantly, visibility that simply did not exist 20 years ago.
Visibility is the key word there.
It is. The boss is no longer the sole arbiter of an employee's reality. The whisper network, the one that used to be confined to the water cooler.
Yeah, where you just warn the new guy in the break room.
Right. Well, now that whisper network is digital, it's searchable, and it is permanent.
Okay, but wait, hold on. Because I know exactly what some people are thinking right now while listening to this.
I can guess.
Because it's the immediate counter-argument you hear in every management seminar. They say, well, if literally every interaction can be recorded or screenshotted or sent to HR, doesn't that just paralyze leadership?
The fear of the fragile workforce.
Exactly. Aren't we just weaponizing HR and creating this incredibly fragile workforce where nobody can ever be criticized and managers are just terrified to give honest feedback?
It is a very, very common fear, but we really have to dissect what is actually happening here. It is crucial to distinguish between the fear of feedback and the fear of unaccountable abuse.
Unaccountable abuse, that's a strong phrase.
Right, because the shift we are seeing isn't about outlawing constructive criticism.
Right.
And it certainly isn't about lowering the bar for performance. It is about the removal of that invisible shield of protection that used to surround the title of manager or director.
I see.
In the past, the power dynamics were just so skewed that a leader didn't actually have to justify their cruelty. Their position on the org chart just justified it for them automatically.
Because they were a VP, so they could do whatever they wanted.
Exactly. But today, because that power can be questioned and documented, it must be justified.
So you actually have to explain yourself.
Right. A leader can absolutely still say, this financial model is completely flawed, the assumptions are wrong, and we cannot present this to the client.
Which is tough feedback, but fair.
Exactly. It's about the work. What they can no longer do is throw the printed model across the room, say, you are an absolute idiot who is wasting my time, and then expect that to remain a private, consequence-free interaction.
Okay, I see the distinction. So it's not that leaders can't be tough. It's that they can't be tyrants.
Spot on.
The shield of isolation is just gone. If you are going to wield power, you have to be able to defend how you wield it in the light of day.
You have to own your behavior.
Right. You have to be able to say, yes, I was demanding, but I was focused on the work, not attacking the person.
Precisely. And this newfound voice for the employee, it didn't just stay confined to, like, HR complaints or sensitivity training modules.
No, it got much bigger than that.
It triggered a massive, completely unavoidable financial wake-up call in boardrooms everywhere.
Because money talks.
Always. Because when employees realized they didn't have to endure abuse in silence, they started doing something that fundamentally threatens the bottom line.
They started leaving.
They walked right out the door.
And this is where the conversation shifts from, just an HR policy discussion to hard economics.
The math is undeniable.
Let's talk about the devastating new math of team morale and retention. Because the contrast between the old view of the indispensable genius and the new reality is just incredibly stark.
It's night and day.
Right. In the past, those toxic geniuses, those Miranda Priestleys, they were viewed as literal load-bearing pillars of the organization.
Yes.
The assumption was always, we can't fire him. Are you kidding? He brings in $10 million a year. The whole company would collapse without him.
But the modern equation has completely flipped that logic on its head. Companies have finally realized a terrifying mathematical truth.
And what is that?
One toxic high performer can easily cost the organization 10 talented employees.
Just one costs you 10.
Yes, and honestly, often more than 10.
I like to think of this as the black hole employee.
Oh, I like that. Explain that.
Well, you have this star performer, right? And they burn incredibly bright. They generate a ton of revenue. They have amazing creative output. Their individual metrics are just completely off the charts.
On paper, they look like a dream.
Exactly. But they have this immense invisible gravitational pull. And just like a real black hole in space, there's an event horizon.
Okay, tracking with you.
So once a junior employee crosses into their orbit, their time, their credit, their sanity, and their creative energy get completely consumed just to fuel the star. Nothing escapes that pull.
Wow, that perfectly captures the dynamic. Let's really dive into the mechanisms of that gravity, the invisible costs of toxicity.
Please do, because it's insidious.
So let's say your black hole employee drives a 20% increase in their own personal output.
Great for them.
Right. They are objectively crushing their individual sales targets and performance metrics. So the CEO looks at the dashboard and sees a massive green arrow pointing up next to their name.
And the CEO is thrilled.
Thrilled, but what the CEO doesn't immediately see is the blast radius.
Uh-huh.
Because of their berating, their unpredictable moods, their whole coat-throwing behavior, they cause a 50% drop in the morale, the creativity, and the collaborative output of the 10 people working around them.
So how does that actually happen, though? Like, neurologically or psychologically?
Yeah.
Why does morale drop that drastically just because someone is unpleasant to be around?
It basically comes down to psychological safety and the human nervous system.
Okay.
When you work for a volatile, toxic leader, your brain is constantly in a state of hypervigilance.
Oh, because you're always on edge.
Exactly. You are literally in fight or flight mode all day. Your cortisol levels are constantly elevated because your brain is continuously scanning the environment for a threat. And in this case, the threat is an unpredictable boss.
You're just trying to figure out what mood they're in before you ask a simple question about a spreadsheet.
100%. Are they going to yell at me if I knock on the door right now?
Right.
And when your brain is dedicating that much energy to threat detection, it literally shuts down the centers responsible for high-level cognitive work, innovation, and risk-taking.
Because you're just trying to survive.
Exactly. You simply cannot be creative when you are afraid. So what happens? The 10 people around the toxic star stop pitching new ideas.
They stop taking risks.
They stop collaborating. They basically just put their heads down, do the bare minimum required to avoid getting yelled at, and go home. That right there is the 50% drop in productivity.
And eventually, the physical and mental toll of that constant hypervigilance just leads to massive burnout.
It's inevitable.
And those 10 shop will start quitting.
Which is where the hard financial math really hits the bottom line. Because now, the company have to spend enormous time and resources replacing them.
And recruiting is not cheap.
The cost of turnover is astronomical. It's not just paying a recruiter a fee, though that's high enough.
Right.
It's the loss of deep institutional knowledge. It's the 3 to 6 months it actually takes to onboard a new hire to get them up to full productivity.
Oh, and what about the clients?
Exactly. It's the damage to client relationships when their point of contact keeps changing every 6 months.
That looks so unprofessional.
And the absolute worst part, you are spending all this money to recruit fresh, excited talent, only to feed them right back into the orbit of the exact same black hole employee.
So they're just going to burn out too.
Yes. When you run that math over a 3-year period, the company is losing massively overall, despite the really high individual numbers that one-star employee is putting on the board.
So the fundamental question that organizations have to ask when evaluating talent has just had to adapt to this reality.
It had to, or they'd go broke.
It's no longer just, are they good at their job? That's not enough anymore. The question has completely evolved into, are they good at their job? And can people actually work with them without quitting?
And this touches on a really profound shift in how we view performance itself today.
How so?
Well, the realization happening across almost all industries right now is that high performance should never have to be exchanged for the trauma or the wounds of the team.
Yeah, you shouldn't have to bleed for a company.
Right. A leader's individual success cannot be subsidized by the psychological wreckage of their subordinates. In today's landscape, a toxic high performer is increasingly viewed not as some corporate savior, but as a massive organizational liability.
Because the math just proves it.
Exactly. The total cost of replacing 10 burnt-out employees vastly outweighs the isolated brilliance of one single jerk.
Okay, but this raises a really critical dilemma. And honestly, it's the fear that sits at the back of the mind of every executive trying to navigate this cultural transition right now.
I know where you're going with this. The fear of mediocrity.
Yes. If we are now firing the toxic geniuses or, forcing them out of the organization because they're a liability, are we doomed to just lower our standards?
It's a valid question.
Are we just accepting mediocrity so that everyone feels warm and fuzzy and perfectly comfortable at work all the time? Does removing friction mean removing greatness?
It's the ultimate executive anxiety.
Right. But the answer, surprisingly, brings us right back to our friend Miranda Priestly and the coat.
This is where we get to the absolute core challenge. Balancing exceptionally high standards with healthy, sustainable teams.
Because you still need high standards.
Absolutely. And there's a crucial nuance here that so often gets missed in conversations about modern workplace culture. The evolution of this dynamic does not mean leaders are supposed to become soft.
Right. If we look at the modern equivalent of that high-powered leader today, she still maintains exceptionally high standards. she is still fiercely detail-oriented. She still expects absolute perfection from her team. She hasn't turned into some passive pushover who just accepts sloppy work just to keep the peace and avoid a bad Glassdoor review.
No, not at all. The difference is that society and structural transparency have essentially forced leaders like her to learn the new boundaries of power.
The boundaries of power. I love that phrase. And that is perfectly illustrated by the specific actions we see shifting in the workplace.
Like with the coat.
Yes. Instead of flinging the coat on the desk for someone else to deal with, she hangs her own coat. Instead of just blurting out whatever devastating, mean critique comes to mind in the moment, she might pause.
She takes it a breath.
Right. Or she might even have a trusted deputy screen her messaging for appropriateness before a really big all-hands meeting.
But I know what the critics say about that.
Yeah, I have to ask. If she has to pause or filter herself or have someone literally screen her words, isn't that essentially fake? I mean, if internally she is still the exact same hypercritical, demanding person, but she just has to run her words through an HR filter.
Yeah.
Isn't she just pretending to be nice to survive modern corporate cancel culture? Does that actually solve the underlying problem?
That is such a great question because it really gets at the intent versus the impact of leadership.
Right.
But it is not just about playing a PR game or protecting an image. These actions, like hanging the coat, filtering the words so they actually focus on the work rather than the person, they are a tacit structural admission of a new reality.
Okay, what reality?
It is an admission that no matter how brilliant you are, no matter how much revenue you bring in, you are no longer above the culture of the company.
Wow, you are not above the culture. The rules finally apply to you.
Exactly. Let's deeply unpack the metaphor of hanging the coat, because it's brilliant. When she throws the coat on the desk in 2006, it is an act of pure, unadulterated entitlement.
Just total dominance.
Yes. It communicates a very specific message. It says, my minor convenience is vastly more important than your physical space, your dignity, or your actual job description.
You are here to serve me.
Exactly. So when she hangs the coat herself today, it represents the unlearning of that exact entitlement. It demonstrates a leader who can successfully separate demanding excellence in work from demanding subservience in humanity.
That is the defining distinction of modern leadership right there. Demanding excellence in the work versus demanding subservience in the humanity. Let's make that concrete for the listeners.
Let's do it.
You can look at a financial spreadsheet and say, this analysis is completely flawed, the data on slide 4 is outdated, and the formatting is just sloppy. Fix it and get it right by tomorrow morning.
That is perfectly fine. That is demanding excellence.
Right. It's direct, it's firm, it doesn't lower the standard one bit. But saying, are you totally incapable of doing basic math? My 5-year-old could format this better than you. You are completely wasting my time.
That is entirely different.
That is demanding subservience. It is attacking the person, breaking down their humanity, rather than actually critiquing the output.
It perfectly aligns with the principles of concepts like radical candor. You know, you can challenge someone directly, pushing them to achieve things they didn't even know they were capable of, while still actually caring personally about them as a human being.
Caring is the key.
Right. The coat thrower challenges directly, sure, but demonstrates zero personal care. That is just obnoxious aggression.
And this crystallizes the ultimate lesson for anyone navigating their career today.
It really does.
The fundamental management challenge has just evolved. 20 years ago, the challenge was simply, how do I get better at my job and drive more revenue?
That was the only metric.
Right. But today, the true challenge of leadership is so much more complex. It's, how do I be excellent and demand excellence without destroying the people around me?
It is a much, much higher bar. Honestly, being a dictator is actually quite lazy.
It is lazy. It's the easy way out.
It is. It requires absolutely no emotional intelligence, no self-regulation, and no empathy whatsoever. You just yell when you're mad.
Right.
But holding a team to an incredibly high world-class standard while still treating them with profound respect. Managing your own stress and your own expectations so you don't weaponize them against your junior staff.
That is hard.
That requires immense self-awareness. That requires real, evolved leadership.
So if you're listening, think about your own teamwork style for a second. When you are under pressure, like when the deadline is looming or the client is angry or the project is just going completely sideways, are you separating your high standards from your ego?
It's a tough question to answer, honestly.
It really is. When the stress hits, do you demand excellence from your team or do you demand subservience just to make yourself feel more in control of the chaos?
It is a vital audit that we all need to do on ourselves because the era of getting a free pass on your behavior just because you are talented is rapidly closing.
It's basically shut.
Yeah, the structural protections that kept those toxic leaders safely in place are gone.
It really is a totally new landscape out there.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's take a look at the through line of what we've unpacked today on this deep dive.
It's been quite a journey from the coat toss.
Right. We started in the dark ages of 2006, exploring a corporate mindset where suffering and enduring abuse was literally seen as the necessary price of admission to work with greatness.
Yep.
We unpacked the psychological toll of conflating toxicity with professionalism.
And from there, we looked at how technology and structural transparency completely democratize workplace power.
Giving people a voice.
Exactly. The ability for employees to speak up, to actually document interactions and push back without immediate retaliation, that shattered the absolute monarchy of the toxic boss.
Which brought us to the hard math.
The scary math.
Once that veil was lifted, organizations finally realized the devastating financial costs of the black hole employee. The fact that one toxic performer drives away 10 great ones, shattering psychological safety and destroying productivity along the way.
And finally, we established that true modern leadership isn't about becoming soft or, lowering the bar. It is about demanding absolute perfection without demanding pain.
It's the ability to separate high standards for the work from attacks on the humanity of the worker.
Perfectly summarized.
So as you go about your week, I really want you to think about the coats you might be throwing in your own life. And I don't just mean at work, I mean in your community or even in your own home.
Oh, that's a great point. It applies everywhere.
It really does. Where are you expecting the people around you to simply absorb your stress, your frustration, or your bad behavior, all in the name of your own performance or your own goals? Where are you acting like you are above the culture of your own relationships?
And to leave you with one final, slightly provocative thought to chew on after this deep dive.
I love a provocative thought.
We've established that modern, healthy corporate culture will simply no longer tolerate the brilliant but toxic high performer. The math just doesn't work out. They are too expensive in terms of human capital.
Right, they're a liability.
So, what happens to all those brilliant jerks?
Oh, that is a fascinating question. Where do the exiled geniuses actually go?
Exactly. Are we about to see the rise of an entire sub-economy of exiled, toxic talent?
A shadow economy.
Think about it. People who are undeniably brilliant, like the absolute best in their field at coding or design or quantitative analysis, but who can only work as isolated independent contractors because no healthy, functioning team will actually allow them in the building.
That is wild.
Will extreme innovation become completely separated from traditional corporate structures? Like, are we creating a gig economy of brilliant mercenaries who are contractually forbidden from ever talking to the junior staff?
A shadow economy of untouchable, unmanageable geniuses operating entirely on the fringes. That is a wild thing to picture, but honestly, it makes complete sense.
It's the logical next step.
I want you to look around your own industry and see if you can spot that dynamic starting to play out right now.
I bet you can.
I bet you can too. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. And remember, the next time you walk into the office, hang up your own coat.